Tastemakers was funded in part by
It all comes down to creating something unique. It's important to take pride in one's work and share expertise. Edward Jones is proud to support the craftspeople who define the maker movement.
and by Fleischmann's Yeast and A.B. Mowry.
As the pressure builds on our food system to produce more and more, hydroponics are seen as a sustainable way to produce high volumes of fruits and veggies. So in this episode of Tastemakers, we're heading to Boston, Massachusetts to meet a team that is building self-contained hydroponic farms. I'm Kat Neville, and I've been telling the story of local food for about 20 years. In that time, I've seen the American food movement explode in tiny towns and big cities from coast to coast. In Tastemakers, I explore the maker movement and take you along for the journey to meet the makers who define the flavor of American cuisine. I'm sure you've heard of restaurants and even houses being built out of recycled shipping containers, but farms? Here in Boston, Freight Farms is building self-contained hydroponic farms out of old shipping containers, and they're controllable by an app, meaning that farming can now happen anywhere at any time of the year. Let's check it out.
This journey goes back all the way till 2010, where me and my co-founder, Brad, were really enamored by the idea of making local more of a standard. But at the beginning, it was all about how do we bring the greenhouse into the city? And rooftop greenhouses seemed to be this huge potential area where we were gonna make the cities green and everybody was gonna have local food. And we dove in and we looked at how feasible that really was, and we just kept on hitting roadblock after roadblock. It was the same trouble that we saw in traditional farming, that it was all about the square footprint and the unique type of land that that person had. So hydroponics has been around for a while, and we knew that this was a platform that had a lot more room to grow. So taking the principles of hydroponics that provide that repeatability, that programmability, and taking that and try to push that one step further. So figuring out how do we create more consistency around hydroponics was our first challenge, to say, this is something that can be profitable, consistent, and give everyone a leg up on farming and local. So that's where the shipping container really offered a lot of the solutions we were looking for. Something that had the R value, the structural capacity, and the accessibility. Shipping containers are everywhere.
Growing the way we do has a variety of different benefits for the environment. So from a food perspective, you're taking the farm and bringing it much closer to the end consumer. So instead of food traveling thousands of miles, we park it right next to either the city or the place that it's actually going to be supplying, and you can harvest it fresh and deliver it pretty much the same day, and you can really taste that.
I think it's about time we get inside one of these freight farms, so we're going to check in with Derek, the company's industrial designer. When you're designing for plants, like, what is it that you have to take into consideration?
It's a lot. I mean, it's sort of the toughest challenge of the product itself, is that you're not only designing for the people who use the product, but one of your main users is the plant themselves. So it's tough to try to understand the space as it quite literally grows and changes over the course of each growth cycle. So that's one of the most difficult things, is trying to understand the space from transplant, when it's a very open space, to harvest when the plants are full and grown, and understand the parameters associated with those.
So when you get the discarded shipping container, what is the process of building this thing?
We use these decommissioned reefer containers, which stands for a refrigerant container, which is used to ship produce all over the world. And what we do is we take this upcycled container and we really just retrofit it with our system. So it comes with the metal walls and the insulation that we need to be able to grow in any environment. So we're just harnessing the power of the container already and optimizing it with our system. And that's pretty much it.
What is the purpose of these different colors? Because when you turn the strips on, you can see blue and also pink. What is that?
Those are specifically developed for the crops that we're growing. So the light is pink because it involves a 5-to-1 ratio of red to blue light. And that is the spectrum of light that leafy greens in particular will absorb when they photosynthesize. And so it's not white or yellow like the sun because that is a full spectrum, which has blues and reds, which we like, and has greens and oranges and everything else, which the plants don't really absorb. So what we're trying to do is really only put the energy into the lights that will allow the plants to grow. So we don't want to waste any energy on wavelengths that the plants aren't utilizing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Each one of these is removable. Can you show us how those come out?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 256 of these vertical growing columns in our farm. Each one of these houses up to 17 plant sites. And so here you can see one of them. We're growing rainbow chard. And this is going to be housing about 14 plant sites because of the size of this crop and density of crop. Harvesting this is as easy as just grabbing and pulling the plug right out. And then replacing it with one of our seedlings from our seedling tables. That's one of the reasons we're able to grow as much as we are, is that as soon as we harvest something, it's being replaced with a seedling to go to mature growth as well.
That's amazing.
Anytime you grow a plant, you have to give that plant the things that it needs in order to thrive. So those are nutrients, water, and light, if you're going to really break them down. We provide all of those same basic necessities to the plants, but in a different form. So soil has those nutrients naturally built into it, usually in an organic form, so broken down organic material over time. We're actually taking those nutrients, breaking them down into the most easily absorbable form, and delivering it to the plants in the form of water. So it's growing in a very similar way, actually, because you're providing all of the same basic nutrients and necessities that plants need, but you're just doing it in a different way.
There are a number of benefits to growing hydroponically. First, there are no herbicides or pesticides used. And second, this is an extremely water-efficient system. In fact, this unit uses only about 5 gallons of water a day, and any of the water that the plants actually respirate into the air is captured and then recycled back into the system.
We are recycling all of the water, so it goes back to our main tank. It's pumped up to our overhead drip emitters and then down the back of the plant, so all the plants are able to grab that nutrient water before it returns back to our main reservoir, and that's where we're able to save about 95 to 99% less water than traditional agriculture. What we're doing is we're actually creating a nutrient-rich water solution rather than using soil, which is where plants gather their nutrients from and all their minerals. Whether that's potassium, calcium, phosphorus, nitrogen, it's all of those sort of mixed into a slurry for a nice little plant smoothie.
Plant smoothie, I like that.
So we have taken basically an extract of nutrients, and it lives in a liquid form, and we are constantly running the water past a series of sensors, and we're able to dispense to specific tanks at specific times to maintain certain levels of that water based on the plant type and what the needs are of that plant.
So from the time we had the shipping container, getting all the other sub-assemblies inside to work together was probably the biggest engineering challenge, which seems pretty simple on its face when you're drawing it out, but when you're in a very confined space to make everything work together, it proved to be a little bit more of an orchestra than we originally anticipated. This was really where automation and software played a big role as far as how do we get plumbing, HVAC, lighting, and the environment to all work in unison when the people that would be using it might not have the expertise to run those things themselves.
This is something that can be controlled remotely. You don't have to be in the freight farm in order to be able to control the climate.
Yeah, and the big reason behind that is we're trying to eliminate as much labor as possible. And one of the biggest scares with people getting into farming is sort of, how do you know that your operation is going to go off without any speed bumps, without any obstacles? And we want people to know if that's happening and be able to immediately respond. So our app allows you to constantly monitor and control remotely.
We knew right out of the gates that people who would be using this would be in cold climates, island climates, probably really hot climates. So we wanted to make a tool that people could use to operate the farm without having to go check on it and trudge through the snow, just to see if the seedlings were growing or the nutrients were at the level they should be. So whether you are in the desert or Iceland, you'll be able to create the perfect day of summer in that farm.
People are focusing a little bit more on urban population growth and how are we going to feed cities, how are we going to feed the world in 2020 and 2050 as the population continues to grow. And traditional farming takes a considerable amount of resources. So if you're taking crops that are traditionally very water intensive and very finicky outside, like leafy greens, and bringing them inside where you can control the environment, and then maybe repurpose the soil to something a little bit more native to the space so that you can increase the soil health.
And what if you want two farms but you're short on space? Just stack one on top of the other. Here in the middle of Boston, on the city's busiest corner, in fact, Chef Mary Dumont and Cultivar is cultivating leafy greens and herbs with her own small freight farm. We're sitting here in the middle of Boston.
Yes.
Right behind me is the freight farm. Inside is the shipping container. Why did you decide to use this?
To be in right downtown Boston, in the center of everything. This is the busiest intersection in the entire city. I think that Cultivar is an intersection of history and commerce, banking, tourism, locals, and I think that this is an interesting intersection between technology and food and the future of food and our ever-changing climate, and it does really combat all of those issues and turns them into positives, which is really important for us. It grows 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 12 months a year. So when there's a massive snowstorm here and the city's shut down, we're still growing. We grow a lot of herbs, tons of different varieties of lettuces, baby vegetables. Radishes grow very, very well in here, baby carrots, turnips, bok choy. So there's some pansies in there. We grow some edible flowers. We have our cultivar salad. People eat it. It's so fresh, so crisp, and so flavor forward that people are like, well, where did you grow this? I'm like, well, we grew it right here.
Funny you should ask.
Another salad that we have is a spring vegetable salad. We present in a carte de musica, which is an ancient cracker, ancient recipe, cooks and it pops up. So we actually let it pop up and pour it out and then put burrata and all the vegetables that we grow in here inside, and it's really delicious and surprising and unusual, and it's this little salad inside a surprise. So that's kind of what we're growing inside this box, is little salads inside this surprise.
Our next stop is here at the Boston Latin School. It was founded in 1635 and is the country's oldest public school, but that does not mean that it is stuck in the past. So I'm standing here with Kate Arnold. Tell me, how is the freight farm used here at the school?
This is a voluntary thing. Students sign up for it at an extracurricular fair, and then they work in the farm for the rest of the year. So they grow food that goes to a local food pantry. We let them decide on some things that they want to experiment with, and then some of the things that we know they're going to want at the food pantry that will grow well, that we can grow lots of.
What are the kids really learning? Are they learning about hydroponics? Are they learning about how to grow? Like, what is it that they're learning in this process?
Yes. They're learning about hydroponics. They're learning about the importance of maybe local food systems. They're learning about what does sustainable food look like? How far does your food travel to get to your plate? All kinds of things like that. And then how to make it sustainable as a farm. So they've been developing an idea for a CSA.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This one self-contained hydroponic farm could be a catalyst for all of that.
What I really love most about the Freight Farm is getting to know a lot more about how my food is produced, where it comes from, and new ways that we can grow food a lot more efficiently.
At the beginning of 10th grade, I volunteered to work in the Freight Farm. And I really liked the idea of doing volunteer work inside the school that actually had an impact beyond the school.
I've learned leadership skills, being able to work with a team, and learning about food production as a whole.
I've learned a lot about like how food is grown, and so when you see it in the supermarket, I don't take it for granted as much. You can just like taste the difference. So I thought that was really interesting.
Teaching the idea of, what do we need to do on this planet in order for people to, it's not just about going green with food, or it encompasses social justice issues. It encompasses all kinds of things. So I think that's what we try to teach, and this was just a great big way to be able to do that and involve kids, with their hands.
So this is one of the oldest public schools in the entire country. It was founded 1635, but you're definitely not behind the times. I mean, you're thinking very forward, being one of the very first to have these self-contained farms.
One of the students several years ago now came up with a slogan for Youth Can, and it was the oldest school, the newest thinking.
Looking back from where we started, I had no idea what customers would be doing with this farm, and no idea to the level of like the businesses that would be run off this. We're at a place where there's a leafy green machine in 36 states, 13 countries, over 200 units out there in such a short period of time, and none of them are the same. Some people are running CSAs, some people are going direct to the chef, other people are putting them on campus and letting the students interact with it. It's just a wide range of things that people are doing with this.
Be Good is a local Boston restaurant that we've had a relationship with for quite some time. So we grow specifically lettuce for them for their signature dish, the Cousin Oliver burger. So you can go to a local Boston Be Good, order the burger, and you'll find some Freight Farms lettuce on it, which is grown right in the heart of Boston, and then just ships directly to their stores.
So we're docked, and we're about to go explore Be Good's Hannah Farm here on Long Island. It's about half an hour by boat through Boston Harbor, and fun fact, this is where the movie Shutter Island was filmed. So Be Good is a really interesting concept. It's a chain of fast casual restaurants, and it's very focused on giving back to the community. Here at this particular farm, the food that you grow, a lot of it is given to the kids who actually work the ground. Is that right?
Yeah, so at this farm, we worked really closely with a camp on the island called Camp Harborview, and the camp serves over 1,000 Boston youth over the course of the summer, and so we worked really closely with them, supplying food directly for their kitchen, for salads, and for other meals at the camp, and then we also run programming on the farm for the campers. And so that comes into fruition in 2 different ways. So we have 3 high schoolers that come and work on the farm 4 days a week, and then they run a farm stand 1 day a week, and it's their own business, it's their entrepreneurial effort, and we just help supply them with the vegetables and the materials they need to be successful. And then we also have all the 11-year-olds from the camp coming up. So over the course of the summer, that will be about 300 campers, and they're coming up, learning about farming, planting a head of lettuce on the first week of camp, Then they come back the 4th week of camp. They're gonna harvest that lettuce, harvest some carrots, some beets, whatever else is growing, and make salad and just like eat some really, really fresh, healthy food. 75% we grow is for donation, and 25% is going directly into the restaurant. So some of the crops out here you'll see on our menu, we have kale and radishes and mint and cucumbers and zucchini, and that stuff is going into our restaurants, mostly in the Boston area.
This is traditional soil farming, but what you're doing with Freight Farm, that is hydroponic. Why did you decide to go in the hydroponic direction for that when you already have access to a farm and all these different farmers?
This farm's really great, and we love what we're doing here, but it's Boston. We have winter, we have snow, and so we're only out here from April through October. And that's true with a lot of our farms in the area, is that we're not gonna be able to get local, fresh ingredients in the winter. And so we saw this partnership with Freight Farms as an opportunity for us to consistently source throughout the year. And one's not gonna replace the other, but they're gonna kind of definitely coexist. So in the summer, we have such an influx of local produce, and we have in our restaurants, we have a board where we're showing where stuff's coming from all over New England. And in North Carolina, there's a map of North Carolina, Virginia, showing where stuff's coming from down there.
Well, and I think that's one of the challenges that a lot of folks don't necessarily understand about sourcing locally in a restaurant. There is true seasonality to these ingredients, and I can see where the hydroponic aspect of growing can really help to fill that need in the middle of the winter.
It really can. It really fits perfectly into what we're trying to do. Even though we exist on an island in the middle of the harbor and we can't access the farm whenever we want, I still consider it very much a community farm because it is all about giving back. It's all about educating. It's all about just bringing people out here and getting their hands dirty, reconnecting with nature. We are so disconnected from where our food comes from. We live in cities, we go to the supermarket, and we expect our produce to look beautiful and for there to be plenty of it, and we can just take it home. And so I really see that as what we're trying to do here, is give people that experience.
And now we're getting back on the boat and heading to the city to check out Be Good's hydroponic farm that is devoted entirely to Boston lettuce.
We produce about 520 heads of lettuce per week that we provide. They'll spend about 3 weeks in this seedling trough area. We will then transplant them into the towers in the mature growing area, and that's where they'll spend the rest of their lives. It's just about 5 weeks. Be Good supports local agriculture, and so growing this lettuce this close to home allows them to reduce the carbon footprint that it costs to produce a head of lettuce, and also it supports local businesses. You can grow anything in here from an oak tree to a head of lettuce to a stalk of kale to a carrot. There is nothing you can't grow in this farm. However, in order to be commercially viable and use this space in the most efficient way, we've found and tested a lot of different types of plants and have really identified the ones that grow the best in this type of environment and then also produce on a regular schedule, which helps support the business end of things.
As we start to go down this path of growing food with technology, you realize that the constraints that we're putting on the farm are something that would be applicable in low orbit or actually deep space. So this is something that we've actually investigated with the help of NASA in our STTR grant a year ago, which was a really exciting endeavor to find out, could we grow food only using solar and the waste from the farm that it generates. We learned a lot about different light recipes and conditions that we would need to bring this application into space. So as we think about the planet and we think about the opportunities of deep space travel, food is probably #1 as far as human life support. So this is where that overlap of that form factor is going to be very similar, and we do hope that that leads us somewhere that we could see some commercial space applications.
Thank you for joining me in Boston, and I will see you next time. There's more information on the makers featured in this series, along with recipes and extra videos at wearetastemakers.com.
tasteMAKERS was funded in part by
It all comes down to creating something unique. It's important to take pride in one's work and share expertise. Edward Jones is proud to support the craftspeople who define the maker movement.
and by Fleischmann's Yeast and A.B. Mowry.